My steadfast one, I did not bring you to this place in your journey, only to watch you waver. I did not carry you across the broken terrain of every trial you have ever faced, steady you through every season where the ground shifted beneath your feet, and hold you together through every moment when you were certain you could not go on, only to abandon the work I began. What I start, I complete. What I build, I reinforce. What I call into being, I sustain. And the faith that is rising inside you right now, even imperfect as it feels, even small and trembling as it seems in your own estimation, is not your construction. It is mine. I am the author of your faith, and I am also the one who perfects it. No storm you face has the power to undo what I have placed inside you, because what I place inside you is not fragile. It is eternal material set into mortal hands, and it will endure. This word is not for the person who has everything figured out. This word is not for someone walking in a season of perfect clarity, who sees every step ahead with full confidence and has never once questioned whether God is truly there. This word is for you, the one who has kept going even when every reason to stop seemed more logical than every reason to continue. This word is for you, the one who has prayed in the dark, cried out without hearing an audible answer, stood on promises that have not yet materialized in the visible world, and still somehow, through a grace that astonishes even the angels, chosen to trust. You may not call what you have been doing faith. You may have been calling it stubbornness or habit or the absence of any better option. But I want you to understand something clearly. What you have been doing is exactly what faith looks like when it is most real. Faith is not the absence of struggle. Faith is the presence of trust in the middle of the struggle. And that is precisely what you have been carrying. Let me build something with you right now. I want to take the raw material of every experience you have been through, every doubt that has tried to take root, every disappointment that has pressed its weight against your chest, every unanswered question that has kept you awake. And I want to show you what I have been doing with all of it. Because while you have been looking at your situation and seeing rubble, I have been looking at the same situation and seeing a foundation. While you have been looking at the scattered pieces of what you expected your life to be and wondering how anything good could come from this, I have been working as the master architect, placing each piece with precision, each experience with purpose, each sorrow with an intention that your natural eyes are not yet equipped to read. The building I am constructing in your life is not built on comfort. It is not built on favorable circumstances. It is built on something far more durable than either of those things. It is built on my character, and my character does not change. Character is the most durable material in existence. Not stone, not steel, not the most unyielding substance the physical world contains. Character. The deep and settled dispositions of a being whose nature is fully formed and fully consistent, who does not swing from one quality to another depending on the pressure applied, who is the same in the hidden places as in the public ones, who is the same when the circumstances are favorable as when they are not. This is what I am. My character is the foundation of everything I promise you, because my character is what makes my promises reliable. If my character could change, the promises would be unreliable. If my faithfulness could waver, the covenant I have made with you would be uncertain. If my love for you could cool, every word I have spoken over your life would carry the asterisk of potential revision. But my character does not change. Not because change is impossible, but because what I am does not have the kind of instability that produces change of that kind. I am not evolving toward goodness. I am not improving toward faithfulness. I am not becoming more loving over time. These things are already fully what I am. And because they are fully what I am, they are not subject to the variations that attend human character, which is always in process, always developing, always at risk of the pressure that reveals the gap between what is aspired to and what is actually there. In me, there is no gap. What I present to you is what I am all the way down. The consistency you encounter in my dealings with you is not a performance. It is not the front face of something more complicated and less reliable behind it. It is the expression of a nature that is, at every level and in every direction, exactly what it appears to be. This is the ground you are standing on. This is the rock, not your faith in the rock, but the rock itself. Your faith is the reaching. The rock is what the reaching lands on. And the rock does not shift because your grip on it varies. The rock is the rock whether your hands are strong or trembling, whether your confidence is full or nearly empty, whether the season is bright or very dark. The rock holds regardless. And because the rock holds, everything built on the rock holds with it. Here is what I want you to receive before anything else. Your faith does not have to be large to be powerful, and it does not have to be perfect to be real. There is a confusion about faith that runs very deep in the way many people have been taught to understand it. The confusion is between the quality of faith and the quantity of it, between the genuineness of trust and the size of it, between the reality of belief and the emotional intensity that accompanies it in any given moment. These are not the same things, and conflating them has caused tremendous unnecessary suffering. A person can have a very large, emotionally intense feeling about trusting God and be operating from a faith that is actually quite shallow in its roots. And a person can have a very quiet, barely perceptible, trembling, and uncertain sense of holding on and be operating from a faith that has roots going down into bedrock. The depth is not measured by the intensity. The depth is measured by what it is anchored to, by what it holds in the storm, by whether it remains oriented toward me when everything else is disorienting. What I am asking you to bring is not perfect faith. Perfect faith does not exist in a finite being living in a fallen world with limited knowledge and a history of real disappointments. What I am asking you to bring is genuine faith. The honest reaching, the real, imperfect, sometimes trembling orientation of a heart that wants me, that reaches for me, that chooses repeatedly and imperfectly and against real resistance to trust me. This is the faith that moves me. This is the faith that I honor with my response. Not the performance of certainty, but the genuine reach of a heart that, however inadequately, is choosing me. There is a misunderstanding that has circulated among my people for a long time, and I want to address it directly. Many have concluded that faith works like a volume dial, and the louder it gets, the more powerfully it operates. They have measured their faith by its intensity in moments of prayer, by the confidence in their voice when they declare what they believe, by the absence of any internal trembling. And when those measurements fall short of what they imagine great faith to look like, they conclude that their faith is too small, too weak, too insufficient for what they are asking. But I never defined faith by its size. A small seed does not become a large tree by being more seed-like. It becomes a large tree by being planted in the right soil and given the right conditions over time. And you are in my hands, which means you are in the right conditions. What I am calling you to understand is that the faith I am asking of you is not faith in your faith. It is faith in me. It is not trust in the size of your trust. It is trust in the reliability of my promise. And my promise does not depend on how firmly you grip it. My promise depends on my word, and my word does not fail. Think about the way a foundation works. Not the finished structure with all its visible beauty and apparent solidity, but the foundation specifically. The thing that makes the visible beauty possible, and that holds the apparent solidity from beneath. When you look at a building from the outside, you do not see the foundation. You see the walls, the windows, the roof, the architecture of everything that was built on top. The foundation is hidden from view, buried beneath the surface, invisible to the casual observer. And yet, everything that is visible depends entirely on what is invisible. The beauty of the structure, the safety of the rooms, the stability of every wall, all of it rests on what no one can see from the outside. This is what faith is in your life. The visible things, the circumstances you can see and touch and measure, they are not the foundation. They are the construction built on top of the foundation. And the foundation, the unseen bedrock on which everything else is being built, is my faithfulness toward you. When the visible things shake, and sometimes they will, it does not mean the foundation has failed. It means you are being given the opportunity to trust what you cannot see over what you can see. It means you are being invited to look past the trembling walls and remember that what holds this whole structure together is deeper than any storm can reach. I built you to be able to do exactly that, not as an aspiration, as a design specification. The capacity to hold on when holding on is the hardest thing is not an accident of your personality or a gift that some people have and others do not. It is something I placed in you when I made you, and I placed it there because I knew you would need it. And here you are, needing it, and here it is, working. You were not designed for a faith that only functions in favorable weather. You were designed for a faith that increases its roots in the storm, that goes deeper when the wind comes, that holds more firmly precisely because it has been tested and proven. The oak tree does not become strong in the absence of wind. The oak tree becomes strong because of the wind, because every time the wind comes, the root system responds by growing further down and spreading further out, anchoring itself more deeply in the earth. What feels like pressure on your faith right now is not evidence that your faith is insufficient. What feels like pressure on your faith right now is the process by which your faith is being made into something that cannot be moved. The architect who designed you knew this from the beginning. Nothing about your current circumstances has surprised me. Nothing about the difficulty of this season caught me off guard and set me scrambling to improvise a response. Long before this season arrived, long before any of this was visible on the surface of your life, I had already prepared the response. I had already set the stones. I had already mapped the way through. What looks to you like a sudden problem is, from my perspective, a sequence I have already walked through in full. I am not figuring this out as we go. I already know the way through. And my invitation to you is this: trust the one who already knows the way, even when you cannot yet see the path beneath your own feet. This is the faith I am building in you. Not a faith that is confident because everything looks good. Not a faith that is steady because nothing is shaking. But a faith that says, He is good even when I cannot feel it. He is faithful even when I cannot see it. He is working even when everything appears to have stopped. He is with me even when I feel completely alone. This is the kind of faith that cannot be broken, because it is not built on circumstances that can change. It is built on a character that cannot change. And that character, my character, is what I want you to meet in a new way right now. There is something I want to show you that you may have missed while you were looking at everything that has been happening around you. While you were focused on the weight of what you were carrying, I was watching something happen inside you. While you were counting everything you were losing, or feared you might lose, or grieved that you had lost, I was noting everything that was being formed. Because there is a kind of formation that only happens in difficulty. There is a particular kind of depth that can only be hewn out by hardship. And the things that have been carved into you by the difficult seasons of your life, the capacity for compassion, the quietness that comes from having nowhere else to go but into my presence, the ability to hold another person's pain without flinching because you know what pain feels like from the inside. These are not small things. These are things that cannot be manufactured in a comfortable life. These are things that only come through the long passage of trust, when trust is difficult. I have been watching you carry what you carry, and I want to tell you what I have seen. Not what you have seen when you look at yourself. The insufficiency, the fear, the moments when you doubted everything, the times when you sat in the quiet and wondered if any of this was real. I want to tell you what I see. I see a person who, despite everything, has not let go. I see a person who, in the middle of confusion and loss and uncertainty, and waiting that has stretched far longer than seemed reasonable, has continued to reach toward me. Sometimes that reaching has been a barely audible prayer. Sometimes it has been a single verse gripped like a lifeline in the middle of the night. Sometimes it has simply been the decision to get up one more time, to put one foot in front of the other one more time, because some part of you still believed, even when you could not feel it, that I had not forgotten you. That decision, every single time you made it, was an act of faith. And faith, even the kind you cannot see clearly in yourself, is not invisible to me. I see every act of trust you have ever offered, and I have treasured every single one. Here is what I have been doing while you have been trusting in the dark. I have been building. Every time you chose to hold on instead of letting go, I laid another stone. Every time you returned to me in prayer, even when your words felt hollow and your heart felt dry, I placed another piece of the foundation. Every time you read my word and chose to believe it, even when your circumstances told a different story, I reinforced the structure. Every time you spoke encouragement to someone else, even when you yourself were struggling, I added another layer of depth to the work I am doing in you. You have been participating in the construction of something magnificent, and you have been doing it without being able to see the blueprints. But the blueprints are real. The design is intentional. The building is coming together exactly the way I planned. Let me address the questions that have been sitting at the back of your mind, the ones you have not always known how to say out loud. Because I know you. I know the moments when doubt has whispered that perhaps my promises have an expiration date that you passed without knowing. I know the moments when you have looked at your situation and thought, this has been going on so long, maybe nothing is ever going to change. I know the moments when you have compared your life to what you imagined it would look like by this point, and the distance between what you hoped for and what you see has felt like a vast, unbridgeable gap. Those moments are real. I am not dismissing them. I am not telling you that you should not have felt what you felt. I am telling you that those moments, every single one of them, were moments when your faith was being tested, not because it was failing, but because it was being strengthened. Gold does not become refined in cool air. It becomes refined in fire. And the questions, the doubts, the long stretches of waiting, these are not evidence of a faith that is failing. These are evidence of a faith that is being made pure. The doubt you have felt does not define your faith. Your doubt is a visitor, not a resident. It may have stayed longer than you wanted it to, but it does not own the house. Your faith owns the house. Your trust, however imperfect and however tested, is the one that has the key and the deed and the right of permanent residence. Your doubt is not louder than my promises. Your uncertainty does not have the power to cancel what I have spoken over your life. There are people who believe that doubt and faith cannot coexist, that if you have any doubt at all, your faith is invalid. But this is not what I have said. The man who came to me with a sick child said, I believe, help my unbelief. He held both at the same time. He brought his faith and his doubt together before me, and what I responded to was not the perfection of his certainty. What I responded to was the direction of his heart. He was bringing everything he had, including the struggle, and placing it in my hands. That is not weak faith. That is honest faith, and honest faith moves me. Honest faith, the kind that says, I do not have this figured out, but I am coming to you anyway, is exactly the kind of faith I honor. So I want to release you from the weight of trying to manufacture certainty that you do not have. I want to release you from the performance of a confidence that does not match your interior experience. I want to invite you instead into the honesty of bringing me what you actually have. The mixture of trust and trembling, the combination of belief and question, the offering of everything you are, including the parts you are not proud of. Bring me the faith you have, not the faith you wish you had. I will work with what is real. I will honor what is genuine. I will take your 5 loaves and 2 fish, the small and seemingly insufficient offering of the faith you actually carry, and I will multiply it. This is what I do. This is who I am. And who I am is the most important thing for you to know right now. Let me sit with you here for a moment. Not in the urgency of action, not in the forward push of declaration, but in the quieter space of understanding. Because sometimes the most powerful thing faith can do is simply be still and know. Simply be present with the one in whom you place your trust. Simply allow the noise to settle and the truth to become clear. Who am I to you? Not who have others told you I am. Not who do the theologies you have absorbed say I am. Not even who do you theologically believe I am. But in the intimate, personal, specific reality of your experience. Who have I been to you? I want you to go back through your own story for a moment. Before this text, before right now, in the years and seasons that have already been lived. Where have you seen my fingerprints? Think about the moment when you did not know how you were going to make it through something, and then somehow you did. Think about the time when a word came at exactly the right moment, through exactly the right person, at exactly the point when you needed it most. Think about the door that closed, the one you grieved at the time, that you can now see was protecting you from something you did not yet understand. Think about the relationship that ended, the plan that fell apart, the path that blocked, and how, somewhere in the territory that came after, something better emerged that you could not have imagined from where you were standing when the loss happened. Think about the night that felt endless in the way, even though you could not have told anyone exactly when or how, the dawn came. It always came. It always came. I want you to count those moments, not as a spiritual exercise, not as a theological argument, but as evidence. Because faith is not blind. Faith has a history, and your history is full of moments where I have proven myself reliable. Your faith is not being asked to leap into an unknown that has no track record behind it. Your faith is being asked to extend into an unknown future based on the evidence of a very well-documented past. You have seen me work before. You have experienced my faithfulness in ways that were specific and real and irreducible to coincidence. And I am asking you to let what you have already seen become the foundation for your trust in what you cannot yet see. This is what the great witnesses of faith throughout history did. They were not people who never doubted. They were not people who faced perfect circumstances and trusted easily. They were people who had seen enough of me to know that my character does not change. They had encountered the reliability of my word in enough real situations to be able to say, even here, even in this, even when everything seems to contradict the promise, I will hold on. Because the one who made the promise has never lied to me. The one who made the promise has never started something and left it unfinished. The one who made the promise has been faithful in ways I can point to and name and testify about, and that evidence outweighs the evidence of the difficulty I am currently standing in. That is the reasoning of faith. Not the absence of struggle, but the persistence of trust, based on a well-founded confidence in the character of the one who is being trusted. And what is my character? Let me say it clearly, not abstractly, not in doctrinal summary, but in the language of your actual life. I am the God who does not give up on what I love. I am the God who, when the shepherd leaves the 99 to go find the one, is not performing a parable for the crowd. I am expressing something true about how I operate. You are that one. Every time you have wandered, every time you have lost your way, every time fear or confusion or pride or weariness has taken you further from my presence than you wanted to be, I have come looking. I have never once said, that one has gone too far, let that one go. I have always come looking, and I am here right now not because you found your way back to me, but because I never stopped coming toward you. My faithfulness is not dependent on your performance. My commitment to you is not contingent on the quality of your faith. I do not increase my care for you when you trust well and decrease it when you struggle. My love is constant in a way that your experience has likely not fully encountered in any human relationship, and I understand if that is difficult to receive. You have been let down before. You have trusted people who turned away. You have placed your confidence in relationships that failed, in systems that disappointed, in promises that were not kept. These experiences have trained you in a kind of protective skepticism that feels wise and necessary. But I am not people. I am not systems. I am not a person who made promises in a moment of enthusiasm without the capacity to keep them. What I speak, I bring to pass. What I promise, I deliver. Not always on your timeline, not always in the form you expected, not always through the mechanism you anticipated, but always. Always. What I am asking you to build your faith on is not an emotion I want you to manufacture. It is a reality I want you to encounter. The reality of my faithfulness, my unchanging character, my eternal commitment to the good of those I love. When you know the builder's character, you trust the building even before it is finished. When you have established, through encounter and experience and the slow accumulation of evidence, that the one making the promise can be trusted, then the waiting for the promise to be fulfilled becomes bearable. Not painless, necessarily. Not without questions, but bearable. Because the one you are waiting on is not uncertain about the outcome. I am not uncertain about the outcome of your story. There's a conversation I want to have with you now that requires a particular kind of honesty. Not the harsh honesty of accusation, not the relentless analysis of everything you have done wrong, but the tender honesty of a father who loves his child too much to let the child live in a diminished version of the truth. So I want to ask you some questions, and I want you to sit with them, not defensively, but openly. Let them land where they need to land. Let them illuminate what needs to be seen. What has your faith been built on? Not what should it be built on. What has it actually been built on? Because there are many things that can masquerade as faith in me when they are actually faith in something else. Faith in a particular set of circumstances working out the way you planned. Faith in the continuation of something you love. Faith in your own ability to manage and navigate your life well enough that things will come out all right. Faith in the absence of the specific thing you fear. These are not the same as faith in me. And when the circumstances shift, when the thing you love becomes uncertain, when your ability to navigate fails, when the thing you feared actually arrives, a faith that was resting on those things will tremble. Not because God has failed, but because the foundation it was resting on was never permanent. Let me ask it another way. What happens to your sense of connection with me when things go wrong? When the prayer does not seem to be answered? When the situation worsens instead of improving? Does your faith flex and hold, or does it collapse into accusation and withdrawal? I am not asking this to judge you. I am asking this because it is diagnostic. It tells you something important about where the actual roots of your trust are planted. If your trust in me is deeply rooted in my character rather than in my circumstances, then when circumstances disappoint, the roots hold. When the visible structure shakes, the invisible foundation remains solid, and the structure can be rebuilt. But if your trust is rooted primarily in circumstances being favorable, then every disappointment becomes an attack on the faith itself. Every unanswered prayer becomes evidence against me, rather than evidence of a timing or a method I am using that you have not yet understood. I want to invite you to move your roots deeper, not as an act of willpower, not as a mental discipline, but as a genuine encounter with who I actually am. Because this is where faith becomes something that cannot be broken. Not through the effort of trying harder to trust, but through the deepening of genuine knowledge of the one who is being trusted. The more you know me, not know about me, not know theological propositions about me, but actually know me through encounter, through time in my presence, through the slow accumulation of experiences of my faithfulness, the harder it becomes to abandon trust in me. Not because abandoning trust becomes theoretically wrong, but because it becomes practically incongruent with what you know to be true. You cannot unknow what you have genuinely known. You cannot unencounter what you have genuinely encountered. And every moment you spend in my presence is a moment of deepening knowledge that becomes the bedrock of a faith that simply cannot be broken by external circumstances. This is why I keep inviting you to spend time with me, not as a religious duty, not to fulfill a quota of spiritual activity, but because the more time you spend with me, the more you know me. The more you know me, the more certain you become. The more certain you become, the less the storms have the power to shake you. The deepening of your faith is not a project you accomplish alone through greater effort. It is something that happens naturally, organically, as a byproduct of genuine relationship with me. So let me ask, how have you been spending your time? Where have you been placing your attention in the difficult stretches? When the pressure has been on, when the weight has been heavy, when the questions have been many, have you been running toward me or running away? Have you been letting the difficulty drive you into deeper encounter with my presence, or have you been letting it become a reason for distance? Both responses are human. I have seen both. I am not surprised by either. But I want you to notice which pattern you have been running, because the pattern matters. The pattern shapes the trajectory. And I have something better for you than the pattern of running away. Every time you run toward me in difficulty, you build. Every time you choose my presence when you could reasonably choose distraction, you add another stone to the foundation. Every prayer offered in exhaustion, every worship moment entered with a spirit too tired to feel much, but choosing to be there anyway. Every reading of my word, even when the words seem to float on the surface without penetrating. These are acts of construction. They are not wasted. They are not meaningless because they did not produce an immediate emotional payoff. They are laying down the material that will hold the whole structure together when the real tests come. And the real tests, when they come, will not find you unprepared. Because the foundation has been built in the quiet, ordinary moments of choosing to trust when nothing extraordinary was happening. This is how faith becomes unbreakable. Not through a single dramatic moment of commitment, but through the steady accumulation of ordinary moments of trust. The rock is not formed in a day. The rock is formed by the pressure of time, by the slow compression of layers, by a process that is largely invisible, until one day you reach down and find that what you are standing on is solid bedrock that cannot be moved. That is what I am forming in you. Now I want to speak to the specific battles you face when faith is tested. Because the testing is real, and I want to be specific with you about how the assault against your faith actually operates. Not so that you will become paranoid or defensive, but so that you will be wise. Because the enemy of your soul has studied this. He understands that if he can shake your confidence in my character, in my goodness, in my specific love for you personally, he does not need to do much else. A faith that has been destabilized at its root does not need to be attacked anywhere else. The whole structure becomes vulnerable when the foundation is questioned. Here is how the attack against faith most often comes. It comes not as a frontal assault. It does not arrive as a voice saying, "Do not trust God." It arrives more subtly, more patiently, more cleverly than that. It arrives as a question. Not a genuine question in the spirit of seeking understanding, but a question designed to introduce corrosive doubt. It sounds like, "Has God really said?" It sounds like, "If God is really good, why is this happening?" It sounds like, "If God really cared about you specifically, would you be in this situation right now?" These questions are designed to create a wedge between you and the character of the one you are trusting. They are designed to make you doubt, not the facts, but the interpretation of the facts. Not to deny that I exist, but to question whether I am truly good, truly faithful, truly involved, truly invested in your specific situation. This is the subtle sophistication of the attack, and you need to know how to recognize it and respond to it, because the response to this attack is not emotional. It is not to manufacture a feeling of confidence that overrides the doubt. The response is to go to what is actually true. When the whisper comes saying, "If God really loved you, your situation would look different," the response is to return to the evidence. To say, "This whisper tells me my situation is evidence against God's love. But my history tells me my situation is not the measure of God's love. I have seen God's love displayed in ways that had nothing to do with comfortable circumstances. I have experienced faithfulness in seasons that were hard. I have encountered kindness in moments of deep difficulty. The evidence of my actual experience does not support the whisper's interpretation. My history is not the history of an abandoned person. My history is the history of someone who has been accompanied, even through the darkest passages, and who has found, in retrospect, that the darkest passages were not the end of the story. This is the response that breaks the power of the attack. Not an emotional rebuttal, not a performance of confidence, but a calm, evidence-based return to what is actually true. You have lived a story in which I have been present. You have lived a story in which my character has been on display. Go back to that story. Let that story be louder than the whisper. And then go forward. Because faith is not only a backward look at evidence, faith is also a forward reach toward what has not yet arrived. After you have reminded yourself of the evidence behind you, reach forward into the promise. What have I spoken over your life? What word has landed in your heart, perhaps in a quiet moment of prayer, perhaps through scripture, perhaps through the word of someone who spoke something true over you that you knew in your deepest self was from me? Bold that word. Not because it feels certain, not because everything around you confirms it, but because I spoke it, and I do not speak empty words. The battle of faith is ultimately a battle for the word, for what is true, for what the evidence actually shows, for what I have actually said versus what the lies have suggested. And you have access to everything you need to win that battle. You have a history of my faithfulness. You have the unchanging character of the one who loves you. You have the promises I have spoken. These are not small weapons. These are the weapons that have held people steady through trials that would break anyone who was not anchored to something deeper than feeling. You are anchored to me, and nothing can pull you from that anchor. Let me speak now to the specific weight of the long wait. Because for some of you, the issue is not a sudden crisis of faith. The issue is the slow erosion that comes from sustained waiting. The faith that was strong in the first season of a promise became more fragile with each passing season that the promise remained unfulfilled. The confidence that came with a clear word from me began to thin as weeks became months, and the tangible evidence of movement remained absent. This is not failure. This is the genuine human experience of trusting in something you cannot see over a long period of time, and it is one of the most demanding forms of faith there is. I want to speak directly into that waiting. The wait is not evidence that I have forgotten. The wait is not evidence that I was wrong when I spoke the word. The wait is not evidence that your faith has failed or that something you did caused the delay. The wait is a part of the process, not a punishment, not an absence, a process. And processes take time. The building I described earlier, the magnificent structure I am constructing in your life, requires time. Foundations must be properly set before the weight of what will be built on top of them can be placed there. The structural integrity of the whole depends on the patience of the foundation work. I am doing foundation work in you and around you, and foundation work is not visible from the outside. It does not look like progress. It looks like nothing is happening. But underground, where you cannot see, where the surface gives no hint of activity, everything is happening. The roots are going deeper. The stones are being set. The preparation is being made for something that will, when it comes, be solidly built. Do not abandon the process because you cannot see the progress. Do not interpret invisibility as absence. Some of the most important work I do in a life is entirely invisible until the moment it is finished. And the moment it is finished, the evidence of all that was happening in the hidden space becomes suddenly undeniable. That moment is coming. I am working toward it even now. Trust the process. Trust the architect. Trust the builder who has never once started a project and walked away. I have not walked away from you, and I will not. I want to describe something to you. I want you to follow me into a picture, because sometimes the heart receives what the mind has difficulty holding. And what I want you to receive here is important. Imagine a stone that has been carried by a river for a very long time. When it first entered the water, it was rough. Its edges were sharp and irregular. It had fractures running through it, places where the stress of pressure had left marks. It was not beautiful in the way polished stone is beautiful. It was raw and jagged and unfinished. But the river received it, and the river did not reject it for its roughness. The river began immediately and continuously and tirelessly to do something about the roughness. Not by breaking the stone, not by reducing it, but by moving over it, around it, through every crevice and along every edge. The water worked. Day by day, season by season, the edges became smoother. The fractures did not disappear, but they were worn to roundness. The stone did not become a different stone. It became a more complete version of what it was always meant to be. And eventually, after a long time in the river, the stone emerged polished, beautiful, not despite having been shaped by the water, but because of it. You are that stone. The river is the process of trust through difficulty. And the water, the constant, patient, persistent, gentle yet relentless presence that has been moving over every surface of your life. That water is my faithfulness. Every difficult season you have passed through was the river doing its work. Every question that rubbed against a sharp edge of assumption and wore it smooth was the river doing its work. Every moment of waiting that polished away another layer of the self-reliance that needed to go was the river doing its work. You are not less than you were before the difficult seasons began. You are more. You are more shaped, more refined, more genuinely and deeply yourself than you were before the river received you. And the polishing is not finished. There is still work to be done. But look at how far you have come. Look at the smoothness that was not there before. Look at the beauty that is emerging from the material that was always there, that just needed the patient work of a faithful river to bring it to the surface. This is what I have been doing, and this is what I will continue to do. Not to diminish you, to complete you, not to break what you are, but to perfect it. Not to remove anything that is genuinely you, but to remove everything that was never you to begin with. Every lie you believed about yourself, every limitation you accepted that I never intended for you, every roughness that was the residue of wounds inflicted and never healed, every defensive edge that formed to protect a hurt that I am now ready to heal. The river does not work against the stone. The river works for the stone. And I am always working for you, never against you, even when the process feels like pressure. The faith that emerges from this process is not the same faith that entered it. The faith that enters the river is often thin and untested, confidence in a God whose goodness has not yet been proven through fire. The faith that emerges from the process is thick and dense and deeply rooted. Confidence in a God whose goodness has been tested and proven, and whose faithfulness is not theoretical but personal and specific and real. This is the faith I am building in you. This is the faith that cannot be broken. Not because it is hardened against feeling, not because it has become numb to difficulty, but because it is anchored to something that has proven itself unbreakable. The anchor holds. I am the anchor, and there is absolutely no storm that can drag you from me. Let me speak now about the specific texture of what it means to exercise faith in the practical moments of your life. Because faith is not only a theological position or an emotional orientation. Faith is a way of moving through the world, a set of daily choices that, accumulated over time, build the structure of an unbreakable trust. And I want to be specific about what those choices look like, because sometimes the grand declarations of faith feel very distant from the ordinary texture of Tuesday. Tuesday is where faith lives, not in the grand moments of declaration, though those have their place. Not only in the peak moments of powerful encounter, though those are real and important. Faith lives in the ordinary Tuesday when nothing is particularly dramatic and you still choose to begin with me. When the temptation to skip the conversation with me, to put it off until things feel more urgent or more spiritually charged, is strong, and you choose to come anyway. Faith lives in the Tuesday when something hard is happening and you have a choice between stewing in anxiety and bringing it to me, and you choose to bring it. Faith lives in the Tuesday when someone around you needs encouragement and you give it even though your own tank is not full, because you have learned to draw from a supply that is not your own. Faith lives in the small daily choices to trust my provision over anxiety, to trust my sovereignty over control, to trust my timing over your own sense of urgency. These small daily choices are not small in their cumulative effect. They are the daily deposits into the account of an unbreakable faith. Each one, in the moment, seems unremarkable, but over months and years, the account grows. And when the great tests come, the account is full. The resource is there. The history of daily faithfulness becomes the muscle memory of trust that activates under pressure without even requiring a conscious decision. I am inviting you to build that account. Not perfectly. Not every day will be a good day. There will be days when you miss the connection, when you are too overwhelmed or too distracted or too genuinely exhausted to engage meaningfully. This does not break the account. This does not start the count over at zero. My grace covers the gaps. What I am asking for is the direction of your heart, not the perfection of your performance. When the general trajectory of your life is toward me, when your hunger is toward my presence and your reflex in difficulty is to reach for me, and your desire in the ordinary moments is to include me, then we are building together. And what we build together is solid in a way that nothing you build alone can be. The faith I am constructing in you has my name on it. It is not your achievement. It is my gift, formed in you through encounter with me. And because it carries my name, it has my durability. What I touch does not decay. What I strengthen does not fail. What I build lasts. Your faith is going to last. Not because you are strong enough to maintain it, but because the one who is building it does not build things that fall. And not because the circumstances of your life will never be challenging again, but because the foundation beneath those circumstances is not made of circumstances. It is made of me. It is made of my word and my commitment and my unchanging nature and the love that drove me to give everything for the privilege of calling you mine. This is what the building stands on. This is what will outlast every storm, every season of difficulty, every long night of waiting. The foundation holds. The builder is faithful. And you, steadfast, tested, refined, unbroken, you will stand. Here, in this moment, I want to do something specific. I want to speak to the place in you that is most afraid. The place that has watched the evidence and still questions. The place that has received the encouragement and still feels fragile. The place that wants to believe in the completeness of my commitment, but is still, quietly, waiting for the other shoe to drop. That place in you is not a failure of faith. That place is the place where some wound is still being healed, where some old experience of abandonment or disappointment has left a scar that makes full trust feel dangerous. And I want to speak into that place directly. I know what made you cautious. I know which experience has taught you that the people who love you most can still leave. I know which disappointments trained you to hold your trust carefully, to not extend it all the way, to leave a little in reserve. I know that this caution was not a spiritual failing. It was a reasonable response to real experiences. And I am not telling you that your caution was wrong in every context. Human beings are fallible, and appropriate discernment in human relationships is wisdom. But I am asking you to do something with me that is different from what you have learned to do with people. I am asking you to extend trust all the way, to the edge, to the place where you have nothing held back in reserve, no escape route prepared, no secondary plan in place for if this does not work out. I am asking for your complete trust not because I am demanding it as a requirement for my help, but because I know what complete trust does for you. The person who holds back always lives with a low-level tension that never fully resolves. There is always the part of them that is watching, waiting, ready to respond to the disappointment they have prepared for. This vigilance is exhausting. It never allows full rest. It never allows full peace. And I do not want that for you. I want you to know, in the deepest interior room of your heart, that I will not disappoint you the way others have disappointed you. Not because things will always look the way you wanted them to look. Not because my answers will always be the answers you hoped for, but because I am for you in a way that nothing in my nature can contradict. My nature is love. My nature is faithfulness. My nature is goodness. These are not characteristics I adopted and could therefore abandon. These are what I am, and because they are what I am, they define every interaction I will ever have with you. Even when I say no, I am saying it in love. Even when I close a door, I am doing it in faithfulness. Even when the path I lead you on is harder than the path you would have chosen, I am leading you on it in goodness. Everything I do toward you is filtered through a nature that cannot be anything other than completely for you. Receive that. Let it go deeper than intellectual understanding. Let it reach the cautious place, the wounded place, the place that holds back in reserve. Let it speak there. You are safe here. You can let go. You can trust all the way. The one who holds you cannot drop you. The one who loves you cannot stop. The foundation beneath you does not shift. You are safe. And now, from that place of safety, let your faith rise. Not manufactured, not performed, not an act of willpower grinding against doubt. Let it rise from the encounter with who I am, from the actual experience of my faithfulness, from the real evidence of a real history of a God who has been present in your specific life in specific ways that you can name and point to and testify about. Let that evidence lift you. Let the reality of who I am be the wind under the wings of your trust. Let yourself be carried by the truth rather than held down by the fear. This is what faith looks like when it is mature. This is what faith looks like when it has been through the fire and come out refined. This is the faith I have been building in you through every season you have lived. And it is real. It is yours. And it is unbreakable. I want to speak now about something that may seem counterintuitive but is deeply true. Something that runs against the way faith is often portrayed in dramatic testimonies and celebrated moments. The greatest acts of faith are often not the dramatic ones. Not the moment when someone stands up in the crowd and makes a bold declaration. Not the crisis moment where everything hangs in the balance and someone makes an extraordinary decision. These moments are powerful and faith is present in them. But the greatest sustained expression of faith is the choice made when nothing dramatic is happening, when there is no audience, when there is no emotional intensity to fuel the decision, when it is simply you and the quiet and the ordinary pressure of a life that is not yet what you want it to be, and you choose to trust anyway. In the building metaphor I have been using, the drama of construction is often visible in the finishing, the tiles being laid, the windows going in, the paintwork being applied. But the real work, the most critical work, was done in the hidden and unglamorous stages of foundation setting. The footings poured in the pre-dawn cold, the reinforcing steel placed with precision, the concrete allowed to cure over long days with no visible progress. This is the faith I am most moved by. Not because I do not honor the dramatic moments of trust, but because this quiet, persistent, unglamorous faithfulness in the hidden places is what makes the dramatic moments possible. You cannot have the building without the foundation. You cannot have the spectacular without the ordinary that preceded it. Let me speak to you now about the relationship between faith and the spoken word. Because there is something powerful in the act of speaking what you believe, giving voice to the trust that lives in your interior. And I want to explore this with you in a way that is honest rather than formulaic. Throughout history, the people who have carried the deepest faith have been people who spoke it. Not in the sense of performing spiritual language for the benefit of an audience, but in the very specific and often private sense of making audible, even to themselves, what they had chosen to trust. This is the origin of the practice of confession. Not confessing sin in this context, but confessing faith. Saying out loud, to yourself, to the air, to me, to the circumstances. This is what I believe. This is what I am trusting. This is what I am holding on to. Even when I cannot see it and cannot feel it, and the visible evidence contradicts it. There is a reason speaking has this power. When you speak a belief, you engage your whole self with it in a way that interior thought alone does not. The spoken word involves not only the mind, but the breath, the body, the physical production of sound. It requires a commitment that the interior thought can avoid. Thinking a belief leaves a kind of escape hatch. The thought can wander, can be replaced by another thought, can drift without your conscious awareness into doubt or fear or something else entirely. But the spoken word has been produced. It has entered the air. You have committed yourself to it in a way that the interior thought did not require. This is why speaking faith in difficult seasons has a particular potency. Not because the words themselves have magical properties. Not because the right formula unlocks a divine vending machine, but because the act of speaking is an act of the whole person committing to what is being said, and that commitment has an effect on the speaker. When you say out loud, I trust that my God is faithful, even right now, even in this, even when I cannot see how it is going to work out, you have done something to the interior conversation. You have inserted a counter-narrative into the space where the anxious narrative was living. You have given the truth a voice that the truth did not previously have in that moment. And the truth, given a voice, has a way of becoming louder than it was before. Practice this, not as a performance, not as the repetition of phrases that have no genuine connection to what you actually believe, but as the honest articulation of the trust that is genuinely present, even when it is small, even when it is accompanied by trembling. Say it. Say to me, I trust you. Say to the fear, you do not have the final word. Say to the doubt, you are not my master. Say to the waiting, I am going to trust through you anyway. not in the language of triumphalism that denies the reality of the difficulty. In the language of genuine, grounded, difficult trust. The trust that says, "This is hard, and I am not pretending it is not hard, and I am trusting anyway." This spoken faith creates a record, not for my benefit. I already know what you believe, in all its complexity and imperfection, but for yours. When you speak your trust in the difficult moment, you create a reference point that you can return to. The moment becomes a flag planted in the ground of the difficult season, a marker that says, "Here is where I chose trust." And when the doubt rises again, and it will, you can return to the flag. You can say, "I chose trust here. I can choose it again." The precedent exists. The pattern has been laid. Over time, the collection of these flags, the places where you spoke your faith into the difficult air of a hard moment, becomes a trail, a visible record of the path you have walked, the choices you have made, the trust you have chosen again and again in the face of every reason not to. And when you are having a particularly difficult moment, when the doubt is loud and the trust feels thin, sometimes the most powerful thing is simply to walk back through that trail, to visit the flags, to remember every time you chose trust and found that the choice was worth making. The trail tells a story about who you are and what you are capable of, and what has been true every single time you have come to me. And the story the trail tells is not the story of a person who has failed. It is the story of a person who has held on, of a person whose faith, tested over and over, has proven itself durable. That is your story. Hold it. Speak it. Live it forward. The persistent, daily, unremarkable choice to trust me is the foundation of every great testimony you will ever tell, and you will tell great testimonies. The seasons you are in right now, the ones that feel long and invisible and without progress, are going to become part of a testimony that will strengthen someone else's faith at a moment when they need it most. What you are building right now, in the quiet, in the ordinary, in the faithfulness that no one sees, is going to be the material from which your testimony is formed. And that testimony is going to matter to people you have not yet met, in seasons that have not yet arrived, for purposes that are already woven into my plans for your life. Nothing you are going through is being wasted. Nothing is being discarded. Every piece of what you are experiencing right now is being incorporated into a design that is larger and more purposeful than your current view allows you to see. The architect does not waste materials. I do not waste anything in a life. Every season, every difficulty, every question, every tear, every long night, every moment of pressing forward when every reasonable instinct said to stop, all of it is material in my hands, and I am a builder of extraordinary skill. What I am making with your life is going to be something that astonishes you when you finally see the whole of it. So carry your faith forward, not perfectly, not without questions, not in an unbroken upward line of confidence and certainty, but forward. Always forward, always choosing to trust the next step even when you cannot see the one after it. Always returning to my presence when you have wandered. Always letting the evidence of my faithfulness anchor you when the doubt tries to uproot you. Always remembering that the faith I have placed in you is not your construction, and therefore not dependent on your maintenance alone. I am maintaining what I have built. I am tending what I have planted. I am sustaining what I have started. Let me say one more thing before I close this chapter of what I want to speak to you today. I want to speak to the version of you that exists in the future. The version that will look back on this season and understand it in a way that the current version of you cannot yet access. The future version of you will have context. They will have the advantage of time, the perspective of having seen how this season resolved, the ability to trace the lines of what I was doing in the hidden places of this period, and see how those lines connected to outcomes that could not have been anticipated from within the season itself. The future version of you will look back on this moment, the moment of reading these words, the moment of trusting in the middle of not seeing, the moment of choosing to hold on when letting go would have been easier, and will be grateful, not just relieved that the difficulty ended, but genuinely, deeply grateful for what the difficulty produced, for the depth of character, for the specificity of compassion, for the tested and proven knowledge of my faithfulness, for the roots that went deeper, for the heartwood that formed, for the lighthouse that was built in the storm. The future version of you will understand things about my faithfulness that the current version of you cannot yet understand, because some things are only knowable from the other side. Some of what I am doing right now in your life is not available for interpretation yet. The data is still being gathered. The chapter is still being written. The building is still being built. And the understanding of what it all meant, the full significance of this season in the whole of your story, belongs to a future version of you who will have the hindsight to see it clearly. Let me speak on behalf of that future version of you, the one who has come through this, the one who has held on and found that the holding on was worth it, the one who will stand on the other side of this season with the full testimony. That future version of you wants to say to the present version, hold on. It matters more than you currently know. What you are building right now, in the quiet and the difficulty and the ordinary persistence of choosing trust, is more important than anything you could build in the comfortable season. Hold on. The architect knows what he is doing. The foundation is holding. The building is coming together. And what it will be when it is finished is worth every stone that is being placed right now in the dark. This word is not wishful thinking. It is not spiritual optimism without foundation. It is based on the fact that I know the end of your story. I have seen the finished structure, and what I have seen is good. The end is not only survival. The end is the fullness of everything I designed for you before time began, realized in your specific life in specific ways that are uniquely yours. The end is the testimony that strengthens generations. The end is the depth of character that makes you someone people trust. The end is the unbreakable faith that serves as a lighthouse for everyone around you. The end is good, and I am building toward it, and you are in the middle of the building, and the building will be finished. Hold on, my steadfast one. Hold on. You are not doing this alone. You have never been doing this alone. Every moment of this journey, through every terrain it has crossed, through every season it has passed, I have been with you, not as an observer from a distance, watching to see whether you will make it, not as a distant administrator of spiritual resources, distributing encouragement from afar, as a presence, as a companion, as the one who walks beside you in the valley and stays with you through the night and greets you at the rising of each new season with fresh mercy and renewed capacity and everything you need for what is ahead. I am with you, right now, in this exact moment, as you read these words, as close as your next breath, as present as the beat of your heart, not metaphorically, actually. I am actually here, actually with you, actually in this with you, and I will actually bring you through to the other side of this, and the side after that, and every side after that, for as long as you draw breath. This is my commitment to you. This is who I am. This is what love that cannot fail looks like in practice. Your faith is unbreakable because what it is rooted in is unbreakable. There is a word that has been used throughout history to describe a particular kind of faith, and I want to spend some time with it. The word is steadfast, not simply stubborn, not merely persistent. Steadfast carries inside it a particular quality, the quality of a thing that holds its position not because the position is comfortable, but because the position is true. A steadfast person is not someone who has never been shaken. They are someone who has been shaken, who knows what the shaking feels like, who has lived through enough difficulty to understand exactly what it costs to hold on, and who holds on anyway, not out of naivety, not out of an inability to see the difficulty clearly, but out of a deep, settled conviction about what is real and what is true and what matters more than the pressure to let go. You are that person. You may not have described yourself that way. You may have looked at your own journey and seen the shakings more clearly than you have seen the holdings on. You may have counted every moment you doubted more carefully than you have counted every moment you chose to trust despite the doubt. But I want you to recount the story. I want you to look again, with different eyes, at the same history you have been carrying. Not to dismiss what was hard, not to pretend that the difficult seasons were easy, but to see, in the fullness of the story, the thread that has run through every chapter, The thread of a person who, despite everything, has not finally and completely let go. You are still here. You are still reaching. You are still, even now, listening to my voice. That is not a small thing. That is the evidence of the steadfastness I have placed in you, working itself out in the only way it can be demonstrated, which is through the test of real difficulty over real time. The steadfastness that matters to me is not the kind that has never been tested. Anyone can hold a position that has never been challenged. True steadfastness is only revealed in the test, and you have been tested. You know what it means to hold on when holding on is the harder choice. You know what it means to choose trust when your senses, your emotions, your logic, and your circumstances are all suggesting that trust is unreasonable, and you have chosen it. Not always with perfect confidence, not always without trembling, but you have chosen it. And that choice, made imperfectly and repeatedly, and in the face of real difficulty, is the most real expression of the faith I have placed in you. Let me describe what this looks like to me from my vantage point. When I see a person who holds on in the middle of difficulty, when I see the choice being made to trust me, even when the circumstances are not confirming the trustworthiness, when I see the small act of faith offered in weakness rather than in strength, there is something that happens in me that is not adequately captured by any human word. The closest approximation is what a parent feels when a child, frightened and uncertain, extends their small hand into the parent's large one. The smallness of the hand does not diminish the meaning of the gesture. The trembling of the hand does not make the reaching less real. The fact that the child cannot see where the parent is leading does not make the trust less genuine, and the parent does not respond to that reaching with a critique of how firmly the hand was extended, or a disappointment that the grip could have been stronger. The parent responds by closing their hand around the small one and holding on, because that is what the reaching deserves, and that is what love does. Every time you have reached for me, I have closed my hand around yours. Every single time, without exception. In the moments of strong faith and in the moments of barely there faith, in the seasons of certainty and in the seasons of profound doubt, in the bright passages and in the long dark ones. My hand has always met yours, and it always will. The question you have sometimes asked, usually in the silence of a hard night, the question of whether I am really there, whether this is really real, whether you are truly heard. I want to answer that question not with a theological argument, but with a reminder. Think about the moments in your life when something that could only be described as the specific presence of a specific personal God reached into your situation in a way that chance and coincidence cannot fully explain. There have been such moments in your life. Not perhaps as many as you would have liked, not perhaps as dramatic as you imagined they would be, but they have been there. The word that came at the right moment, the provision that arrived when the door seemed closed, the peace that settled over you in a situation that had no natural reason for peace, the sense of being known, truly known, in a moment of deep solitude when you had said nothing to anyone and yet felt understood. These moments are not manufactured. They are not wishful thinking. They are the signature of a God who is present in the lives of those who call on His name, and your life bears that signature in places you have not always stopped to notice. Stop and notice now. Let the memory of those moments come. Let yourself receive them not as distant historical events that happened and are now irrelevant, but as living evidence of the most important truth about your life, that you are known and held and accompanied by the God who made you and who has never once taken His hand from your story. This is what makes faith unbreakable. Not the force of your will, not the intensity of your resolve, the memory of encounter, the lived knowledge of what it feels like when I show up, and the conviction, formed from that lived knowledge, that the one who has shown up before will show up again, that the one who has been faithful in every previous season will not suddenly become unfaithful in this one, that the character which has been consistent across every chapter of your story is not going to change in this chapter. This conviction, gentle but immovable, quiet but unshakable. This is the heartwood of an unbreakable faith. Heartwood is the oldest, densest part of a tree. On the outside, you see the bark, the visible surface that interacts with the weather and changes over time. Beneath the bark, you find the newer wood, still active, still growing, still responding to its environment. But at the very center of the tree, you find the heartwood, the original core, compressed by decades of growth, dense beyond what ordinary forces can penetrate, no longer actively growing but serving an entirely different function now. The heartwood is what gives the tree its structural integrity. It is what allows the tree to stand in the storm. It does not flex and respond to every pressure the way the outer layers do. It holds. And because it holds, the entire tree holds. The encounter with my faithfulness, accumulated over the years of your life, is the heartwood of your faith. And though you may not always feel it, though the outer layers of your faith may flex and respond and sometimes feel very uncertain, the heartwood holds. The core of what you know to be true holds. The thing that does not bend, that does not flex, that cannot be removed by any storm. The settled knowledge that I am real, and I am good, and I am with you, and I do not abandon what I love. That is your heartwood. And it is holding the whole tree upright even in this storm. Let me take you somewhere specific. Let me walk with you into the interior architecture of your own trust and show you something that I find beautiful. When I look at a person who is in the middle of a genuine faith struggle, genuinely uncertain, genuinely wrestling, genuinely caught between what they believe and what they see, I do not see a person who is failing. I see a person who is at the most alive edge of faith. Because faith is not most alive in the comfortable, settled certainty of a person who has no reason to doubt. Faith is most alive at the edge, at the threshold between the visible and the invisible, between the certain and the uncertain, between what the eye can confirm and what the heart is choosing to hold on to. This edge is not a dangerous place. This edge is the most important place. This is where trust does its most essential work. The writers of the ancient texts were not people who had everything figured out. Read their words carefully, and you will find people who argued with me, who questioned me, who cried out in frustration that they could not understand what I was doing, who begged for answers that did not come in the form they expected. You will find people who said, my God, why have you turned away from me?" You will find people who said, "How long, Lord? How long will you forget about me?" You will find people who describe their trust as a desperate holding on in the middle of a very dark place, not a confident walking in the light of full understanding. These are not the testimonies of weak faith. These are the testimonies of the most real, most honest, most genuine faith there is. Faith that does not hide its struggle. Faith that brings its full reality into my presence and refuses to pretend that everything is simpler than it is. This is the faith I honor. Not polished performance of certainty. Not the presentation of a spiritual life that has no cracks or imperfections. The genuine, honest, sometimes agonized, always reaching faith of a person who is in real contact with real difficulty and who chooses, in the middle of that real difficulty, to keep calling on my name. The crack in the vessel is not a flaw that disqualifies it from being used. The crack is where the light gets in. The crack is where my glory becomes visible through the broken places in a way that it could never be visible through the polished, seamless performance of a person who has never struggled. Your struggle is not disqualifying you. It is qualifying you for something specific. There is a kind of ministry, a kind of presence, a kind of impact that can only come from a person who has been in the fire and knows firsthand what the fire feels like. There are people around you, people you will encounter in the seasons ahead, who are in their own fires and who will need to be met by someone who does not offer them a formula or a platitude, but who can say, from a place of genuine personal experience, I have been in this kind of fire, and I can tell you that the one who met me there will meet you too. This testimony cannot be manufactured. It can only be lived. And you are living it right now, in the very struggle that has felt like evidence of weakness. You are building the credential that will allow you to reach someone else with a word that actually lands. Nothing about your journey is being wasted, not even the hardest parts, especially not the hardest parts. So, when the pressure of the testing comes, and it will come because this is the nature of a life lived in genuine trust, when the circumstances press, and the doubt rises, and the questions crowd and the waiting stretches, return to what you know. Return to what is settled in your heartwood. Return to the evidence. Return to the memory of encounter. Return to the character of the one you are trusting. Not as an act of spiritual willpower that overrides your genuine experience, but as a deliberate choice to let what is most true be louder than what is most urgent. The urgent feeling in the middle of the storm says, "This is the final word on your situation." The truth says, the storm is not the final word. The architect is still building. The foundation is still holding. The story is not over. And the one who has the final word over your life has already spoken, and what he spoke was good. Now walk with me into the question of what happens when faith does not produce the result you expected, because this is real, and I want to address it directly rather than leaving it in the shadows where it tends to do the most damage. There have been moments when you trusted, and the thing you were trusting for did not come the way you expected it to come. There have been prayers offered in genuine faith that did not seem to be answered in the way you asked. There have been promises held with sincere conviction that took far longer to materialize than you anticipated, or that materialized in forms so different from what you envisioned that they were barely recognizable as the answer you were looking for. And somewhere in the aftermath of those experiences, a question settled. Did my faith fail? Did I not have enough? Did I do something wrong? Is there a formula I am missing? A key I have not yet found? A threshold of belief I have not yet reached? Let me dismantle something that has caused more unnecessary pain and unnecessary self-condemnation than almost anything else in the life of faith. The idea that answered prayer is always the direct result of sufficient faith, and that unanswered prayer is always evidence of insufficient faith, is not mine. This equation did not originate with me. It has been taught as though it came from me, and it has done enormous damage to people who were already hurting. People who were told, in their darkest moments, that their darkness was their own fault because they did not believe hard enough. This is not how I work. This is not my heart. And I want to speak against it directly. My purposes are larger than any single prayer. My plans encompass more than any single outcome. When I answer prayer in ways that differ from what was asked, it is not because the faith was insufficient. It is because I can see the whole picture, and you can see only a portion of it. And what serves your deepest good and the deepest good of those connected to you is not always identical to what you asked for in the moment of the asking. This is not a consolation prize for unanswered prayer. This is a genuine description of the way wisdom and love operate in the management of lives that are interwoven with each other and with the whole of my purposes in the world. The wise parent does not always give the child what the child asks for, not because the parent does not love the child, but precisely because the parent's love is informed by a knowledge of what is truly good that the child does not yet possess. And this does not mean the parent does not hear the asking. The parent hears every asking. Every request reaches me. Nothing you have ever brought to me has bounced back unheard from a closed heaven. Every prayer you have prayed has been received. I want you to hear that and let it settle into the deepest part of you before you move past it. Every single one. The ones whispered at the edge of sleep. The ones cried out in the car on the way to something you were afraid of. The ones that were more groan than words because the situation was too heavy for articulate language. The ones offered with trembling hands and a voice that cracked on the words. The ones that felt so small and personal that you almost apologized for bringing them. All of them reached me. All of them are known to me. All of them are held in the record of every conversation we have ever had, because every prayer is a conversation with me, and I do not delete conversations. I keep them. I weigh them. I answer them in wisdom and love, which means in ways that are informed by a knowledge of your actual good that is more complete than your knowledge of your own good. Does this make the unanswered prayer painless? No. Does this make the differently answered prayer easy to receive? Not always. There is genuine grief in expecting one thing and receiving another, even if the other turns out to be better. There is genuine disorientation in having a clear word, a clear promise, a clear sense of direction, and then watching the path lead somewhere unexpected. I am not asking you to pretend this grief is not real. I am not asking you to skip the process of honestly grappling with disappointment. I am asking you, on the other side of that grappling, to consider that the evidence of my faithfulness is not always the evidence you were expecting. Sometimes faithfulness looks like an answer that comes from a direction you were not watching. Sometimes it looks like a no that is protecting you from something you could not see. Sometimes it looks like a detour that turns out to be the main road, and the road you thought was the main road turns out to be a dead end you were mercifully redirected from. The faith that holds through the differently answered prayer is among the most mature forms of trust I know. It is the faith that says, I do not understand what happened here, and I am grieving what I expected, and I am honestly confused about the path I find myself on. And despite all of that, I will hold on. I will stay in this relationship. I will keep talking to you. I will keep trusting that you have not forgotten me and that your purposes for my life have not been derailed by the failure of my plans. This faith is not naive. It is not the faith of someone who does not fully understand what they are trusting through. It is the faith of someone who understands it fully, feels it completely, and chooses trust anyway. This is the faith I am building in you. This is the faith that, once formed, becomes genuinely and deeply unbreakable. Because the thing that breaks faith in the middle of disappointment is the belief that the differently answered prayer means I do not care, or that I am not there, or that my promises do not apply to you specifically. But when you know my character, when you know from genuine encounter that I am faithful and good and present and genuinely invested in your life, then the differently answered prayer becomes something you can hold differently. Not without pain, but without the fundamental rupture of trust. The relationship remains intact. The conversation continues. And in the continuation of the conversation, over time, the answer often becomes clearer. Why the thing you asked for could not have given you what the thing you received eventually gave you. Why the timing that seemed so late was actually exactly right. Why the no was kindness. Why the detour was the truest path. I have not failed you. Not once. Every move I have made in your life has been motivated by a love so thorough and so persistent that it will not rest until you are fully and completely brought into the fullness of everything I designed for you. Nothing that I have allowed in your path has been careless. Nothing has been punishment. Nothing has been abandonment. Every single thing has been the work of a builder who knows what he is doing, who sees the finished structure that you cannot yet see, and who is making every decision with that finished structure in mind. Trust the builder. Let me pause here and speak directly to you about something that often goes unacknowledged in the conversation about faith. There is a cost to sustained trust. There is a real, felt, daily cost to choosing to hold on when the holding on is hard. And I want to acknowledge that cost, not minimize it, not explain it away with easy theological language, but sit with you in the reality of what it actually requires to trust through a long and difficult season. Because if I address only the theology of faith and never the felt experience of it, I am giving you only half of what you need. The other half is the assurance that the cost you are paying is seen and honored and not asked for lightly. Trusting through difficulty costs you something emotionally. It costs you the energy it takes to continually redirect your mind away from the catastrophizing narrative and back toward what is true. It costs you the sustained effort of maintaining hope when hope is not being reinforced by visible evidence. It costs you the emotional discipline of not processing your fear in ways that would be temporarily relieving, but ultimately damaging to the relationships around you and the peace within you. These are not small costs. The emotional labor of sustained faith in a hard season is real labor, and it is tiring. And sometimes the tiredness is acute enough that you wonder how you can keep doing it. Trusting through difficulty costs you something socially. Sometimes the people around you do not understand why you are still holding on. Sometimes the community that was meant to support your faith is itself in a season of doubt or cynicism, and what you receive from them is not encouragement, but a kind of skeptical impatience. Sometimes holding to a conviction that others have released means standing in a position of relative isolation, which adds its own weight to an already heavy season. The social cost of faith, the cost of being the person who is still trusting when the easier option would be to step back and let go, is a real cost. And trusting through difficulty sometimes costs you something in your self-image. There is a kind of narrative about how life should work that is very deeply embedded in most human beings. The narrative that says, if I do the right things and believe the right things and follow the right path, things will go well for me. When they do not go well, when the doing right and the believing right and the following right is not producing the outcomes the narrative promised, there is a cognitive dissonance that can turn into something painful, a questioning of whether you are the problem, whether something in you is insufficient, whether the gap between what you trusted for and what you have received is a reflection of some lack in you. This questioning, when it goes unanswered, can become a kind of quiet self-accusation that slowly undermines the confidence of the trust. I want to speak to all three of these costs directly. To the emotional cost. I see it. I know exactly what you are spending to hold on. Every unit of energy that goes into redirecting your mind away from despair and back toward trust is registered by me. Nothing of what this costs you is invisible to me or uncounted by me. And this, I provide for the cost. My grace is sufficient. This means, among other things, that the grace I supply is sufficient for the specific demands of the season you are in. It is not a generic, one-size-fits-all provision that may or may not be adequate for your specific situation. It is precisely calibrated to what this particular season requires of you. When you feel empty, you have not used more than I can supply. You have simply used more than your own capacity can hold, which is exactly the design. The design was never for you to sustain this on your own reserves. The design was always for the insufficiency of your own reserves to drive you back to the inexhaustible supply of my grace. The emptiness is not failure. The emptiness is invitation. To the social cost. The isolation of a faith position that others do not share is real, and I do not minimize it. But I want to offer you a different frame for what that isolation means. You are not isolated from me. You are never isolated from me. And the loneliness of standing in a position others have vacated, while genuinely painful, is also a form of intimacy with me that the crowd cannot offer. Some of the deepest encounters with my presence in all of human history happened in conditions of external isolation, in the wilderness, in the prison, in the exile, in the desert. The outer stripping away of human support created a space in which the inner encounter with divine presence became possible, in ways that the comfortable and socially supported life could not have produced. I am not saying isolation is good. I am saying that in the space that isolation creates, if you turn toward me rather than away from me, you will find a companionship that goes deeper than anything the social support could have provided. The crowd-dependent faith is often a shallow faith. The faith that has had to stand alone, with no one to validate it but me, becomes a faith with roots so deep that no storm can move it. To the cost on your self-image, please hear this. The gap between what you trusted for and what you have received so far is not a reflection of your inadequacy. The gap is not a grade on your faith performance. The gap is a space that I am still filling, a promise that is still in process, a building that is not yet visible because the foundation work is still being done underground. Your worth before me is not measured by the outcomes of your life. Your worth before me was established before your life began, by a decision I made about your value that is independent of anything you have done or failed to do, of anything that has gone well or poorly in your story. You are not less to me because this season has been hard. You are not loved less because the answers you hoped for have not yet arrived. My love for you is not a response to your success. It is a prior commitment to your worth, prior to any success or failure, prior to any season of abundance or difficulty, prior to anything you have ever done or not done. You are valuable because I say you are valuable, and what I say does not change. Carry this with you. Let it be the answer to the self-accusing voice. Let it be the ground you stand on when the self-image questions come. Not a formula to defeat the questions, but a truth to return to when the questions arise. A truth that is deeper than the questions, and that remains standing when the questions have been asked and honestly faced. You are loved completely. You are valued infinitely. You are held securely. And the difficulty of this season is not evidence against any of those things. It is simply evidence that the building is still being built, and the building will be finished. Now I want to take you somewhere in your own memory, somewhere specific, somewhere personal, somewhere that is uniquely your story and not anyone else's. I want you to find, in the record of your own history, the moment that is hardest to reconcile with the goodness of a faithful God. The moment that, when you are honest, still carries a question. The moment that, even now, has an edge to it that does not fully resolve when you apply the usual language of faith to it. I am not asking you to find this moment in order to reopen it and make it fresh again. I am asking you to find it because I want to speak into it specifically, into the exact texture of that unresolved space. You do not have to tell anyone else where that moment is. This is between you and me. But find it. Let it be present in your awareness right now. The moment that still asks a question you have not fully received an answer for. The moment that, in the quiet, still feels like a piece of evidence the faith has not yet fully addressed. Are you there? Good. Now hear me. That moment is known to me in its entirety. I was there in it, not as an observer from a distance, not as a bystander who saw it happen and was unable to intervene. I was there in it as a participant, present in ways that may not have been visible to you at the time, working in the interior of the situation even when nothing on the exterior seemed to reflect my presence. The outcome of that moment did not take me by surprise. The pain of it did not catch me unprepared with an insufficient response. Every dimension of what happened in that moment was held in my awareness, and the response I made, the ways I was present, the things I was doing in the hidden spaces of that situation, the purposes I was working toward, was complete and thorough and motivated entirely by love, even if none of that was apparent to you when you were standing in it. I know that this does not resolve the question completely. I know that the mystery of suffering, the mystery of the unanswered prayer, the mystery of the terrible thing that happened when you were trusting and a different outcome seemed so clearly the right one, these mysteries are not fully dissolved by theological propositions, even true ones. The mystery remains. And I want to tell you that it is okay for the mystery to remain. You do not have to have every question answered before you trust. You do not have to understand every dimension of every decision before you trust the one who made the decisions. Trust that is only possible when understanding is complete is not trust. Trust is precisely the choice to hold on in the presence of the mystery, in the company of the unanswered question, without demanding full understanding as the prerequisite for continued relationship. I am asking you to trust me with the mystery, to say, I do not understand this. It still has an edge. But the one who was present in it is the same one who has been present in everything else, and his character has been consistent across everything else. And I am going to let the evidence of his consistency speak more loudly than the unanswered question. I am going to hold the mystery and the trust together, in the same hand, without requiring that one of them go away before I can keep the other. This is the maturity of faith I am drawing you into. Not the resolution of all questions, but the capacity to carry the questions without letting them carry you away from the one who loves you most. There is a particular kind of peace that comes to the person who has reached this place. Not the peace of having no questions. The peace of being at rest in the relationship even while the questions remain. The peace of saying, my trust is not in my understanding. My trust is in the character of the one I am in relationship with. And his character is solid in a way that is broader and deeper and more enduring than my current understanding of every aspect of my own story. From that peace, the unbreakable faith lives and operates and serves and reaches out toward others, not despite the mystery but through it. Here is something I want you to understand about the nature of what I am building, because it has direct implications for how you carry your faith in the practical moments of your daily life. The structure I am constructing in you and through you is not primarily for your benefit alone. I want to be clear about this, not to diminish your importance to me, but to enlarge your understanding of the purposes that your faith is serving. You are not simply a recipient of my building work. You are also a participant in it. You are a stone in a larger structure than the one you can see from your individual vantage point. And the strength of the stone you are, the quality of the material you bring, the solidity of the foundation in your own life, all of this has ripple effects far beyond your own situation. Think about the people in your circle, the ones who watch how you carry difficulty, the ones who notice whether your faith holds when things are hard, the ones who are themselves wrestling with whether to trust, whether to believe, whether any of this is real, and who are watching you to see how the experiment of faith turns out for a real person in real circumstances. You may not know who is watching. You may not have any idea that someone in your peripheral vision is quietly, carefully observing how you navigate this season, but they are there. And what they see in you is either going to encourage their own faith or confirm their own doubt. Not because you are responsible for their spiritual state, you are not, but because the body of faith is designed to be mutually reinforcing, and the way you hold on in difficulty genuinely contributes to the foundation of someone else's capacity to hold on. This is one of the reasons I invest so thoroughly in your faith, not only for you, although it is very much for you, but also for the ones who need to see what steadfast faith in a real human life actually looks like, for the one who will come to you in a season ahead with a situation that mirrors your current one, and who will need to hear from someone who has been there, for the child who is watching, without you realizing it, how their parent navigates uncertainty, and who is forming their own theology of trust based on what they observe, for the friend who is at the edge of abandoning faith altogether, and who needs to encounter someone who has faced what they are facing, and found it possible to hold on. Your faith is not small. Your faith is not contained within the borders of your own life. Your faith has a reach that you cannot fully measure, a ripple that extends into circles and situations and futures that you are not yet aware of. When you hold on, you are not only holding on for yourself, you are sending a signal into the network of everyone connected to you that says, this is possible, this is real, the one we are trusting is trustworthy, the foundation holds, you can stand on it too. This is why the attack against your faith is never only personal. The adversary understands that a person with an unbreakable faith is not merely a difficult individual to bring down. A person with an unbreakable faith is a source of strength for everyone around them, a stabilizing presence in their community, a testimony that cuts through the noise of discouragement and speaks into the hearts of people who are on the verge of giving up. This is why the attack is persistent. This is why the testing is real, because what I am building in you is not just a personal structure, it is a lighthouse, and a lighthouse is most valuable in the storm, not despite the storm. You are being made into a lighthouse, not in the sense of someone who performs spiritual leadership for a crowd, though that may or may not be part of your specific calling, in the sense of someone whose life, in its quiet and persistent faithfulness, sends a signal that cuts through the darkness and says to anyone who is navigating a hard passage, there is a shore, there is solid ground. The navigator who built this light knows the way. Come toward the light. This is what your unbreakable faith does in the world. This is why I am so committed to it. This is why the building work matters so much. And this is why you should not underestimate what it means to hold on in the small, ordinary, unglamorous moments of daily trust. Every time you hold on, the light gets a little stronger. Every time you choose trust over fear, the signal reaches a little further. Every time you return to my presence in the middle of difficulty, the lighthouse holds its position against the storm. And somewhere, someone who was lost finds their bearing. Let me speak to the practical life of faith now, to the texture of what it actually looks like to live in unbreakable trust, not in a theological framework, but on a normal afternoon when the pressure is on and the feelings are not cooperating, and the evidence still does not line up with what you are holding on to. Because this is where faith actually lives, not in the elevated moments of spiritual intensity, but in the Tuesday afternoon of ordinary life where everything that is being tested gets tested most quietly and most persistently. What does it look like practically to live from an unbreakable faith? Before I describe those practical expressions, let me speak about something that underlies all of them. There is a disposition of the heart that makes everything else possible. A posture, a way of being oriented that, when it is present, makes the practical choices flow naturally, and when it is absent, makes them feel like an uphill effort against a constant current of resistance. That disposition is surrender. And before you recoil from the word, let me be clear about what I mean by it and what I do not mean. I do not mean surrender in the sense of passive resignation. I do not mean the giving up that says, nothing matters, nothing can be changed, whatever happens, happens. That is not surrender. That is despair wearing the costume of acceptance. The surrender I am describing is something altogether different. It is the active, intentional, chosen release of the controlling grip. The decision to stop trying to manage and manipulate and force the outcomes of your life into the shape you have decided they must take, and to open your hands instead and say, I bring what I have. I offer what I know. I trust the rest to you. This surrender is not the abandonment of responsibility. It is the recognition of the proper limit of your responsibility, and the equally clear recognition of where my responsibility begins. There is a burden you have been carrying that was never yours to carry. The burden of making everything work out. The burden of ensuring that all the pieces come together in the right way at the right time to produce the right result. The burden of being responsible for outcomes that are genuinely beyond your control to determine. Many people carry this burden without ever consciously choosing it. It simply accumulated over years of experience in a world that rewarded effort and punished passivity, until carrying it became the default posture, and the idea of releasing it felt irresponsible or naive. But the burden of ultimate control was never designed for human hands. The muscles were not made for it. The nervous system was not designed to sustain it. And the person who is carrying it is perpetually exhausted, perpetually anxious, perpetually braced for the moment when the control slips and everything falls apart. Let me take that burden from you, not because effort and responsibility are wrong, but because ultimate control is not yours to carry. What is yours is the faithfulness of the next step, the honesty of the next conversation, the generosity of the next encounter, the courage of the next choice. What is mine is the outcome. What is mine is the destination. What is mine is the larger purpose that your individual step is serving, the design into which your particular piece fits, the finished structure that your individual stone is contributing to. Trust me with what is mine. Take back what is yours. The boundary between them is actually clearer than the anxiety makes it feel. The person who has learned to surrender, not as a one-time dramatic moment, but as a daily practice, a continual releasing of the grip, is the person who carries the least weight and accomplishes the most. Not because they are doing less, but because the energy that was previously tied up in managing the unmanageable is now free for the things they are actually designed to do. The anxiety that was perpetually consuming bandwidth is redirected into presence, into genuine engagement with the people and responsibilities directly in front of them, into creativity and generosity and attention that produces real and lasting fruit. The surrendered person is not a passive person. The surrendered person is actually more effective than the controlling person, because they are working with the current of my purposes, rather than against it. This is the kind of life I want for you. Not a life of passivity, but a life of alignment. Not a life of doing nothing, but a life of doing what is genuinely yours to do and trusting me with the rest. Not a life that holds on to outcomes with white knuckles, but a life that moves through each day with open hands, offering what it has, receiving what comes, releasing what is not its own to manage, and resting in the confidence that the builder is still building and the architect still holds the blueprint and the whole is in infinitely better hands than any human hands could provide. This surrender, practiced daily, becomes the single most powerful act of faith you can perform. Because every act of surrender is a concrete declaration of what you actually believe. When you release control of an outcome to me, you are not just saying words about trusting me, you are demonstrating trust in the most concrete way available, with the actual outcome of the actual situation in your actual life. This is the faith that works. This is the faith that has genuine substance behind it. And this is the faith that, practiced over time, becomes a way of being rather than an act of effort. The person who has practiced surrender long enough no longer has to work hard to not grip tightly. They have been formed, through the repeated practice, into a person whose default posture is open-handed. This formation is one of the deepest works I do in a person's life, and it is one of the most beautiful things I witness. Let me also speak to what it looks like when the faith is genuinely being lived from the inside, rather than performed from the outside. Because there is a difference, and both people around you and you yourself can feel that difference, even if naming it is difficult. The performed faith is the faith that says the right things, but feels hollow when it says them. The faith that presents a confident front but is quietly terrified behind it. The faith that uses the language of trust, but is functionally operating out of fear and control. This faith is not without value. Even imperfect faith is better than no faith. But it is exhausting to maintain, and it does not produce the deep peace that genuine trust produces. The genuine faith is the faith that is moved from the mind into the body, from the theological into the experiential. It is the faith that says the same things the performed faith says, but says them from a different place, from a place of actual contact with the reality of my faithfulness. This faith breathes differently. It is less urgent, less brittle. It can sit with uncertainty without needing to immediately resolve it. It can hold a question without the question becoming a threat. It can be present with someone else's suffering without being destabilized by it. It has, in the body, not just in the mind, the evidence of encounters with my grace that have left a residue of genuine peace. This is what I am building in you through the process of faith being tested over time. The goal of every difficult season is not suffering for its own sake. The goal is the movement of faith from the level of intellectual assent into the level of bodily knowing. The level at which the body itself carries the memory of what my faithfulness feels like, so that when the storm comes, the body responds with trust the way it responds with thirst when it needs water, not as a decision, but as a reality. This is the fully embodied faith. This is the unbreakable faith that I am after in you. And the path to it runs, inevitably, through the difficult seasons. Not because I designed difficulty for cruelty, but because the movement from intellectual to embodied knowing requires the material of real experience, and real experience includes difficulty. Every hard season you have survived has deposited something in your body, not only in your mind, a kind of knowing that lives below the level of articulation, a quiet confidence that has been built, brick by brick, from the accumulated experience of trusting through difficulty and finding, on the other side of the difficulty, that the trust was warranted. This knowing is one of the most valuable things you own. It cannot be taken from you by any external circumstance. It cannot be argued away by any cleverly constructed doubt. It is simply there, the weight of lived experience, the evidence of a history with a God who has proven himself real in the specific texture of your specific life. Let that knowing speak to you right now. Let the deep part of you, the part below the current noise of whatever is pressing on the surface, speak its testimony. What does it know? It knows you have been through hard things before, and you are still here. It knows you have been afraid before, and the thing you were afraid of did not destroy you. It knows you have been at the end of your own resources before, and supply came from somewhere beyond your own capacity. It knows you have questioned before, and the questioning did not end the relationship. It knows you have doubted before, and you found your way back to trust. It knows, in the bones of itself, that this is not the first difficult passage, and it will not be the last. And the one who has been with you through every previous one is the same one who is with you in this one, and will be with you in every one that follows. Let that knowing be loud right now. Louder than the anxiety, louder than the doubt, louder than the noise of the presenting situation. Let the deep embodied testimony of a life that has been accompanied by a faithful God speak into the part of you that is currently struggling to see clearly, and receive, from that testimony, the one thing that it most wants to tell you. You have not been abandoned. You have never been abandoned. You will not be abandoned. The one who is with you has never left, will never leave, and is present right now in this very moment with everything you need. What does it look like, practically, to live from an unbreakable faith? It looks like choosing gratitude before circumstances justify it. before the answer comes, before the situation resolves, before the evidence confirms the promise, giving thanks for what I have already done, for what I am already doing in the places you cannot see, for the faithfulness that has been demonstrated in every previous season, and will be demonstrated in this one too. Gratitude is not a performance of positivity over authentic difficulty. Gratitude is a choice to remember the full story, rather than only the current chapter. When the current chapter is hard, remembering the full story requires a deliberate act of will. But that act of will, practiced consistently, does something to the orientation of the heart. It keeps the heart open to receiving what is coming rather than closed by the grief of what has not yet arrived. The words you choose also matter more than most people realize. What you say about your situation has more power over how you experience your situation than people commonly acknowledge. Not in the sense of a magic formula where saying the right words produces the right outcomes. In the more fundamental sense that the words you use to describe your reality shape the way you relate to your reality. When you consistently describe yourself as someone who is being defeated, your experience of your situation is shaped by that description. When you consistently describe yourself as someone who is being sustained by a faithful God through a difficult season, your experience of the same situation is shaped by that different description instead. Both descriptions may be accurate in different ways, but the second one is more fully accurate because it includes not just the visible difficulty, but the invisible faithfulness that is present alongside the visible difficulty. Choosing words that include the whole truth, not just the half-truth of what is hard, is an act of faith in the deepest sense of the word. Presence with the people around you is another expression of genuine faith. Choosing to show up for others, even when your own situation seems to demand all your available attention. This may seem counterintuitive. When you are in a difficult season, the natural instinct is to turn inward, to manage your own resources carefully, to conserve what you have. But the paradox of generosity in difficulty is one of the most powerful spiritual truths there is. When you give from a place of limitation, when you choose to be present for someone else's need even when your own needs are pressing, when you extend kindness and encouragement into someone else's life from a tank that does not seem to have the capacity to spare, something happens. The supply does not deplete, it replenishes, because you are drawing not from your own reserves but from mine, and my reserves are not subject to the laws of depletion that govern human resources. The person who trusts enough to give from the little they have always finds that the little becomes enough. This is not a formula. This is the pattern of how generosity functions in the economy of faith. Caring for the body belongs here too, not as a separate spiritual matter but as an integrated part of the whole. Fatigue and physical depletion make everything harder, including faith. The person who has not slept, who has not eaten adequately, who is running on the residual fumes of a system that has been pushed too hard for too long, will find that the emotional experience of faith is much thinner than it would otherwise be. This does not mean their faith is actually thinner. It means the nervous system is not providing the emotional support that it would provide if the body were cared for. Sleep, rest, physical nourishment. These are not unspiritual things. These are the physical substrate of the capacity to be fully present with me and with the people I have placed in your life. Caring for the body is not vanity, it is stewardship of the vessel in which the extraordinary life of faith is being lived. Take care of yourself. Let me minister to the whole of you, body and soul, and receive that ministry with the same openness you bring to the more obviously spiritual dimensions of your life. Community is also a vital dimension of the unbreakable faith. Not performance in community, not the presentation of a life that has no struggle, but genuine, honest participation with people who are also trusting through difficulty. The isolation of hard seasons is one of the most effective tools used to erode faith over time. When you carry a burden alone, it grows heavier with each passing week. When you share a burden with others who are also trusting through difficulty, something shifts. The burden does not disappear, but it becomes bearable in a way that it could not be alone. You remind each other of what is true. You hold each other's arms up when the strength to hold them up alone is gone. You speak the words that the other person needs to hear at the exact moment when their own voice has gone quiet. This is the design of the body of faith, and it is not an accident. It is the way I designed human beings to function in community, mutually sustaining each other through the difficult passages of trust. Returning, again and again, to my word is perhaps the most anchoring practice of all. Not as a magical text that automatically resolves all questions when it is read, but as the living expression of my character, the place where I have spoken most consistently about who I am and how I relate to those I love and what my purposes are in the world and in individual lives. When the voices around you are loud, the voice of doubt, the voice of discouragement, the voice of the culture saying that what you are trusting is foolishness, return to the place where my voice is recorded. Read slowly. Let the words of people who have been through fire and found me faithful in the fire speak into your own fire. Let the promises that have been tested by centuries of real human experience in real situations of genuine difficulty speak to your situation. You are not the first person to need unbreakable faith in the middle of a difficult season. The record of those who went before you is full of testimony, and that testimony is available to you every time you open the pages that hold it. Now let me speak about something that often functions as the strongest challenge to sustained faith, something that operates not as a dramatic frontal assault, but as a slow, steady, almost imperceptible thinning. The challenge of the ordinary. Not the crisis, not the catastrophe, not the dramatic trial that galvanizes all your spiritual resources and produces the focused intensity of someone who knows they are being tested. The challenge of the long, unglamorous ordinary, where nothing dramatic is happening, and yet the slow erosion of attentiveness gradually distances you from the source of everything that makes the faith vital. Many people have survived the great crisis of faith only to find years later that their faith has become thin in a way they cannot easily diagnose. The crisis did not break it. The ordinariness did. The long stretch of seasons in which everything was fine, not great, not terrible, just ordinary, gradually reduced the urgency of maintaining deep contact with me. Prayer became shorter. The word became less central. The community was attended less regularly. The reflex of turning to me in difficulty was replaced, slowly and without drama, by the reflex of turning to other things that provided more immediate relief. And one day, when a test did come, the person found that the roots were shallower than they had realized, and the tree that had seemed so solid moved more than they expected. This specific erosion deserves to be addressed directly, not as an accusation, but as a warning born of love. The ordinary is where the greatest building happens, and it is also where the greatest erosion happens. The same daily choices that, over time, build an unbreakable faith can be reversed. The same daily choices unmade, the same return to my presence repeatedly postponed, and the same architecture of trust can slowly thin. Not collapse, not shatter, just thin. And the thinning is so gradual that it can go unnoticed until the test comes. There is a practice I want to invite you into that is specifically for the ordinary seasons. A practice that maintains the vitality of the faith, not in the dramatic moments, but in the normal ones. The practice is simply this: treat ordinary seasons with the same intentionality you bring to difficult ones. Do not wait for the crisis to drive you back to deep contact with me. Do not wait for the urgency to feel the urgency. In the ordinary quiet season when nothing is pressing, choose to go deep anyway. Choose to spend time in my presence not because you need something specific, but because I am worth the time. Because the relationship itself is the goal, not just the provision. Because the foundation you lay in the easy season is what you will stand on in the hard one. Because the roots that go deep in the quiet are the roots that hold in the storm. This is the discipline of an unbreakable faith, not the dramatic discipline of the warrior preparing for battle, though that has its place. The quieter, more sustainable discipline of the person who has decided that the relationship with me is the most important thing in their life, and who therefore gives it the attention that the most important thing deserves. Not only in the emergency, but in the ordinary, especially in the ordinary. Because the ordinary is where most of life is actually lived, and the faith that only functions in the emergency is a faith that is only available for a fraction of the life it is meant to sustain. What does this look like practically, in the texture of an ordinary day? It looks like beginning the day with a moment of orientation that is not a performance of spirituality, but a genuine brief contact with my presence. Not necessarily long, not necessarily eloquent, just real. Just the turning of the attention in the first moments of awareness toward the one in whose hands the day will be lived. A breath, a recognition, a simple interior movement that says, "You are here and I am here and we begin this together." It looks like carrying the conversation through the day, not stopping everything to pray formally at regular intervals, though formal prayer has value, but maintaining the background awareness of my presence through the ordinary hours. The practice of brief natural interior contact, the gratitude that arises when something goes well, the asking for help when something is difficult, the simple acknowledgement of beauty when it appears, the quiet offering of a moment of frustration to me instead of letting it accumulate into something larger. These brief contacts, woven through the fabric of an ordinary day, keep the thread of connection alive and maintain the vitality of the faith in a way that the once-a-week intense encounter cannot fully sustain. Paying attention is also a form of faith, noticing the specific ways my faithfulness shows itself in the ordinary days, the ways that are too small to make it into the dramatic testimonies, but that are nonetheless real expressions of my presence in a life. The parking space. The conversation that turned out to be exactly what was needed. The unexpected provision. The slight shift in a difficult relationship. The moment of unusual clarity in a decision that had been cloudy. These small evidences of my presence and involvement are everywhere in an ordinary life, but they are easy to miss when the attention is not tuned to notice them. Developing the habit of noticing trains the faith in the ordinary, the same way that counting blessings in the crisis trains the faith under pressure. And it looks like trust in the small things. Because the person who trusts me in the large things, but manages the small things independently, has not yet fully integrated the faith into the whole of life. The most complete expression of trust is the life in which every dimension, the significant and the trivial, the dramatic and the ordinary, the things that feel weighty, and the things that feel too small to bring to me, is lived in ongoing conversation with the one who is interested in it all. I am interested in all of it, not only the crises, not only the moments of spiritual intensity, the Tuesday afternoon, the conversation about nothing in particular, the small irritation and the small delight and the small confusion of a perfectly ordinary human day. All of it is welcome in my presence. All of it is part of the relationship, and the person who brings all of it to me, who does not segment their life into the spiritual parts that belong to God and the ordinary parts that are handled without reference to God, is living the most integrated and the most unbreakable faith of all. The faith being formed in you is not only for the mountain, for the valley too, not only for the dramatic seasons, for the ordinary ones, which are most of what your life is made of, and which are full of the small daily material from which the most durable trust is built. And through all of this, through the gratitude, through the careful words, through the generosity, through the rest, through the community, through the return to my voice in Scripture, through all of this, keep the line of conversation with me open, not formal religious language, not performance, just the honest, ongoing, unfiltered dialogue of a person who is in genuine relationship with me. Tell me how you actually feel. Ask the questions you are actually carrying. Bring the doubt directly into my presence rather than trying to resolve it before you approach me, as though I would not accept you unless you arrived with your faith already in perfect condition. I accept you as you are. I receive you where you are. I am not waiting for you to get your spiritual act together before I will talk to you. The conversation is available right now, exactly as you are, with everything you bring, including the parts of what you are carrying that you are not proud of. Come, just come, as you are. And in the coming, find that you are met by a presence that receives you completely and holds you completely and loves you in a way that does not require you to be more than you currently are before it will extend itself toward you. This is the practical life of an unbreakable faith, not dramatic, not spectacular, not a performance. Just the daily, ordinary, persistent practice of turning toward the God who is always turned toward you. Now let me speak something over you, not a sentiment, not as religious formula, as declaration, as something I am speaking from my throne, from the place of all authority, into the specific reality of your specific life. I declare that the faith I have placed in you will not be destroyed by the storms that come against you. I declare that every attack designed to uproot your trust will be met by roots that go deeper than the attack can reach. I declare that the foundation I am building in your life will outlast every difficulty that has been piled on top of it, will be standing and solid long after every temporary trouble has passed away. I declare that the small acts of trust you offer me, the prayers that feel insufficient, the worship offered through tears, the choice to hold on one more time, I receive every one of them as the most precious offerings on the earth, and I honor every one with my faithful response. I declare over the doubt, it does not define you. I declare over the weight, it is not abandonment. I declare over the difficulty, it is not punishment. I declare over every question, they are heard and held, and I am answering them in ways that are deeper and more thorough than you can yet see. I declare over your history, it has not been a series of accidents and meaningless suffering. It has been a guided and purposeful process in the hands of a God who does not waste pain. And I declare over your future, it is not at the mercy of chance or the hostility of your circumstances or the power of any force that is arrayed against you. Your future is in my hands. My hands do not lose what they hold. My hands do not release what they have claimed. My hands do not tire and let go of what they have committed to carry. You are carried. You are held. You are loved with a love that has no bottom and no ceiling, no beginning and no end, no condition and no limit. The love in which your faith is rooted is not small. It is not fragile. It is not uncertain. It is the most powerful force in all of existence, and it is completely, entirely, specifically, personally directed at you. This is what you are trusting in. This is what your faith is planted in. This is the rock beneath every step you take, and the ground beneath every building I am constructing in your life. And nothing, no trial, no disappointment, no doubt, no long season of waiting, no attack against your peace or your confidence or your sense of being loved, nothing can remove you from this. Nothing can separate you from what I am. Nothing can undo what I have committed to for you. Your faith is built on a rock that cannot be moved, and on that rock, it will stand. One last thing I want to leave with you, not as a conclusion, but as a companion for the road ahead. Every person who has ever lived a life of genuine faith has had a moment, at some point along the journey, when they were forced to answer a question that could not be evaded and could not be answered theoretically. The question was this: is what I believe actually true? And is the one I am trusting actually trustworthy when it costs me something real to keep trusting? This is the question that every comfortable faith must eventually face, and the answer cannot be worked out in advance. It can only be lived. The answer is formed in the living of it, in the choosing of trust when the cost is real and the alternative is genuine. And every person who has chosen trust at that moment, who has said yes at the moment when yes was genuinely difficult, has found that the answer is confirmed in the choosing. Not always immediately, not always with a dramatic sign, but in the long arc of the living, in the way the character deepens, in the way the compassion grows, in the way that peace eventually comes even through the storm. The question is answered. The trust was warranted. The one trusted was trustworthy. The answer is yes. You are in the process of forming that answer right now. Every choice you make to trust through the difficulty, every small act of faith in the middle of the uncertainty, every prayer offered when the return is not yet visible, all of it is part of the living that forms the answer. And the answer you are forming is going to be one of the most important things about your life. Not the circumstances, not the outcomes, not the visible results, the faith, the trust, the confirmed knowledge built from the raw material of a real life, lived in genuine relationship with a real and faithful God. Every stone of this season is contributing to something magnificent. All of it is worth it. I promise you, every hard moment is worth it. Stand, my steadfast one. Stand in the knowledge of what I am building. Stand in the confidence of who I am. Stand with the roots growing deep and the foundation holding firm and the building rising one stone at a time, one season at a time, one act of trust at a time, toward the fullness of everything I designed for your life before the beginning of time. Stand with the questions still in your hands and the tears still on your face and the waiting still stretching before you, and know that you are not alone in it, and know that the one who is with you has already seen the end of this story, and the end is good. The end is more than good. It is the fullness of everything I planned for you before a single day of your life had yet been lived. Your faith has not failed you, not once. Your faith has been carrying you all along. And now, as I speak these words into the deepest places of your heart, your faith is being strengthened beyond what it was when you first began to read. Not because of what you have done, but because of who I am and what I am doing in you. The foundation is being reinforced. The roots are going deeper. The building is rising. And nothing can stop what I have started. Amen. If this message touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear these words today. Type Amen in the comments to receive this blessing and to stand with everyone else who is trusting through difficulty right now. If your faith has felt fragile and you needed these words, leave a comment below and let the community know that you are holding on. You are not alone in this. There are thousands of people listening right now who are trusting through difficulty just like you, and your honest testimony encourages every one of them. Like this video if it strengthened your faith, and subscribe so you never miss another message from God. He has more to say to you, and every word He speaks is for your good.